Okay, in the previous video, we talked about the positives. How can we become more productive? What does that look like for us? In this video, we're going to start asking about those negatives. Why aren't you more productive right now? I want you to think back to those two statements that you wrote. Remember, statement one was, what does it mean to you in order to be productive? If you're productive, what are you doing differently? Statement two, what's your timeline? Now let's take a look at some issues that you might encounter in the short term, the medium term, and the long term, starting with the short term. Short-term issues are typically based around focus and motivation. And I like to break them up into two separate things, but actually the tips that you can use to solve them are very, very similar. Focus issues might include that you're always starting new things, but you're never really finishing them, especially during the day. You know, I washed that one plate, but I still have all those dishes left, but then I moved on to something else. Even if you think that you're doing something productive by moving on, you're still not finishing that task. A lot of people try to multitask, and it has been shown repeatedly that humans are just really bad at it, but that might be one example of a focusing issue, where you have 2 or 3 or 5 different things going on. Maybe you're trying to write a document, and you have your collaborative Teams app open, as well as listening to music, and all those 3 things are making it very hard to focus on any one of them. Sometimes those focusing issues are where the document is open. Maybe you have to read something and you know you're staring at the screen, but the words are just not coming at you. They're not working for you and you don't understand what's going on. Or you're trying to write a document and it's open, but you're just staring at it. That's a focusing issue. Motivation issues. Well, it's really hard to start. I know I need to write that report. All I have to do is open up my word processor and type in the title and I can get going, but it takes so much effort. You're trying to do something, but you'd really rather be doing something else. Your mind isn't in it. And finally, this is an interesting one. You fill your time with trivial tasks in order to feel busy, but you avoid the big ones. So you're always reorganizing your desk. You're looking at the Excel spreadsheet to make sure that your schedule is set up. You're looking over your emails to make sure that it's properly file formatted. But actually, you have that big report and it's due tonight and it's not even open on your computer yet. So you're busy, but you're not being productive. And that's a motivation issue. On the medium term, we have prioritization issues. So I have a lot of stuff to do, but maybe I'm focusing on the wrong ones. So here are some examples of issues of prioritization. The first is, well, little things are always coming up. I know I have to write that report, but I also kind of need to just review that one email, and maybe I have to read the documentation. Maybe I have to reorganize my office and set up my desk and everything else. And suddenly you just don't have the time to finish that report. Sometimes it's really easy to focus on those smaller but not bigger projects. And again, it goes back to the idea of feeling busy but not productive, where you're always doing something, but you're not actually working on the big things. Another example of a prioritization issue that I think a lot of my students see very frequently is that things don't get done until they're very urgent. And the joke is that the due date, the date something is due, is the date you do it. That's the date you start. And that is always going to lead to crunch time issues. And then other prioritization issues are where you see something that's far away in the future. It's a month from now and say, oh, I've got time. I'm okay. So think about those issues. Do they affect you? Now let's think about long-term goal issues. And here are just some examples. I want to be the CEO. Well, that's a huge goal. So maybe the problem with that, and if you're sitting there and you have these grand goals, but you're still working in the mailroom, maybe you need to think about things smaller. I want more. I want more responsibility. I want more things. I want more capacities. But I don't know what I want. I just know that I'm not satisfied now. So that's an example of a long-term issue. And then, this is a really interesting one. It's hard to find time to plan my career because I've got so much to do. And this goes back to that idea of always being busy but never being productive. It's really hard to find time to expand in my role when I have to file all these things. Now we can start thinking about how exactly do these 3 different timelines interact to hold us back from being productive. As an exercise, I want you to craft your productivity mission statement in 3 steps. This productivity mission statement is going to help you to choose the tips that are going to work for you and then to revise that plan as you go. Step number 1 is to identify what's holding you back. Now, I personally recommend that you focus on only one of the timelines for now. As I keep on saying, maybe you do have some problems that you want to solve in the long term, the short term, and the medium term, all 3. Focus on one. Typically, if you're having issues getting started, especially in the day, you should focus on that one first, become really productive for your day, and that way you can have the space and the time to know that when you do a medium or long-term plan, you can handle it. But then in step 2, I want you to identify why is it a problem. So if you identify something that you think should be a problem, but you can't really pinpoint or explain why, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's not important. And then in step 3, once you have all these 2 things down, clearly state what you need to do to solve the problem. I'm going to work through some examples to show you. All right, so in step 1, identify what's holding you back. This is a very challenging thing for some people. It's very easy for others. I've worked with a lot of people who came in and said, yep, I know my issue. I just don't want to get started in the morning. Okay, well, let's work on that. Other people say, I'm not being productive, but I really don't understand why. Some people even tell me they're always busy but never productive, almost like that's a repeated beat in the course. So first, like I said, try to stick with one timeline and then one main thing holding you back. So if you're always having trouble meeting the deadlines, that's your one main thing. You're not going to talk about the fact that it's hard for you to get into work in the morning. It's also difficult for you to leave at night. It's difficult for you to switch tasks. All of those things might be important, but the one main thing holding you back might be the fact that you're always missing deadlines. Step 2, this one's interesting. Once you've identified an issue, explain to yourself why it is important. And sometimes we think things are issues because people tell them that they're issues. So for example, let's say that you always leave things for the last minute. And people are saying, well, you really shouldn't do that. You really need to make sure your plans are in place. But hang on a second. You always get them done. They're always done well. You're thrilled by the time crunch. You always work really well when there's that pressure. So what's the problem here? Is that really the issue you need to solve? I personally don't think so. Now, on the other hand, if you're always time crunched and you always feel stressed about that, well then yeah, it's an issue and you need to fix it. Step 3 is now your mission statement, your productivity mission statement. Clearly state what you need to do. Keep it at a high level. Don't say, I need to use Microsoft Calendar. That's not what I'm talking about. I'll show you my example when we're done this. Write it down, even if you don't know how to do it. Yes, that's what the other videos are for. But I want you to write down what you think you need to do, and we're going to use that as a plan to develop your personal strategy. So here's an example. I like to think in the medium term. I'm pretty decent when I'm working in the short term. And in terms of the long term, my 5-year plans and all of those things, I think that I have a fairly okay handle on those. But for me, my biggest challenge with productivity is in the medium term. In particular, my big issue is that I have issues starting things when I know that they're due very far into the future. If I have something I need to have ready for 3 months from now and it's going to take a lot of work, it's really hard for me to start today because I don't feel that motivation. Now, why is that an issue? Well, it leads me to feeling rushed, and that leads me to being stressed as the deadline approaches. And I don't like that. I don't like the feeling of stress. I do not work well when I have that much pressure, so I need to figure out a way to get started sooner and spread the work out over longer periods of time. That second part for me is extremely important. If I got started today but tried to finish it all today, and in fact it was a week-long project, well, that's not really helping me. I'm still crunching. I'm just crunching at the wrong deadline. So I need to start and spread out my work. That's what I'm looking to do. I want you to think about this as a starting point, as a rough draft. It's something you're going to revisit and revise. As a design problem, when we're doing design, we're going to draw something out, we're going to make up a plan, we're going to test that plan, see if it works, and if it doesn't, we're going to evaluate what didn't work and fix it. This isn't something that is set in stone, and it's not something that's going to work for you for your entire life. Maybe you have issues right now getting started in the day, but once you solve those, you realize, oh, I actually have something I want to fix when I'm working on long-term or motivational issues. So your plan is going to change, but I want you to get started with it so you're thinking about what you can do to move yourself forward in your planning stage.